Good evening, folks. Welcome to Will and Dave Show. Tonight we've got a little bit more interesting and kind of convoluted story for you, but we're going to be talking about some relatively heavy topics. We'll be talking about the gay rights movement, touching on some assassination, some death, self-defense law with the Rittenhouse trial. Generally, it's going to be some heavy stuff dealing with death, some dealing with sexuality and racism, sexism, etc. So we just want you to be aware of that as we get into the show. Make sure you're informed.
Welcome to the Will and Dave Show.
Have to dance in front of Churchill.
Getting yourself all hyped up. Oh yeah, you got to do those disgusting charismatic jigs.
He passed away. You knew that, right?
No.
Carmen?
Way to kill the vibe, Dave.
He's in a happier place. He had cancer. He's in a happier place. He's happier now than he was when he was alive at the end. So,
okay then.
But he fought it right till the end, and he was dancing those.
I bet he was
jigs right till the end.
I bet he was.
He was planning a tour actually when he died.
That doesn't even surprise me.
Why don't we get to our sponsors, and then we'll get to the heavy stuff in the week in review, etc.
Let's do that.
The sponsor for this episode is Northern Truss, your one-stop shop for floor systems and for all your truss needs. Phone the team at Northern Truss at 250-787-3033. Locally owned and operated in Fort St. John, BC.
Hey there, and thanks for tuning into the Will and Dave Show. I'm Susan, and I don't know about you, but I think that in the whole world there's nothing as warm and comforting as a handmade quilt. And quilters the world over have wonderful stories to tell. So to showcase their stories, I host a podcast. It's called Measure Twice, Cut Once, and Other Life Lessons Learned from Quilters. You can tune in to the podcast anywhere that podcast apps are, whatever your favorite is, or you can find a direct link on my website, stitchedbysusan.com. And now, back to the show.
Oh, we don't want to be on me. We want to be here. This is where we want to be.
Better. I'm very important. I need to be included.
Your mother's podcast. I'm just looking at the stats right now. Is over 14,500 downloads.
It's damn impressive.
And just for comparison, I'm just going to look up. I'm going to look up ours. And we're going to see if we can get somebody to download our podcast so we can
purely out of pity.
So we can gain by one.
Get a pity
stats, overview, all time. Ooh, we're at 781.
Hey, you know what? I'm pretty proud of that.
I'm more proud of your mother. She's cooler.
Well, yeah, but still, I'm proud of 700. That's 700 lives we've reached out and touched.
We have. There are 3 of you watching. We'd love to have you say hi and let us know where you're watching from and what the weather is like where you're watching.
We're going to be talking about some kind of convoluted stuff tonight, so feel free to chime in, ask questions, or be part of the conversation any way you want. Or argue with us. That is also valid. We enjoy that too.
Argue with in the comments. We never ban anybody. We're just happy to.
Have we? I don't think we ever had.
No, we were banned once, but no, we've never never banned anybody.
Anywho,
what was your week like?
It was a good week. It was pretty good. It was short.
Yeah.
Remembrance Day weekend, I guess.
Right. So you worked on Thursday and we're off Friday, right?
Yeah, we worked on Thursday. Still took our few minutes of silence and then took Friday off. Yeah.
So you work at our sponsor in Northern Truss.
I do.
Who's also my brother owns that.
Yeah, small world.
So you should remind him that he has to pay you a living wage on Thursday, pay you time and a half as you worked on a stat holiday. See how far that gets you before he throws you out the door.
We all volunteer for it. You know what? He's nicer than most employers because he offered us the Thursday off or the Friday or the Monday, whichever one we preferred.
There you go.
He let us pick our day off.
Did you all vote on it or how did you just...
Yeah, we just voted. It was pretty unanimous. Yeah.
There, right?
I mean, he forgot that it was a paid stat. When we first brought it up, he was like, that's not a stat. And we're like, yeah, it is. He'd just forgotten. As soon as he realized it was, he was like, oh, okay, well, let's figure out which day we want to take, because taking the Thursday is a little weird, but, we have that option if we want to. It just kind of ruins the flow of the week. Nobody wants to take the Thursday off and go right back to work for one day before the weekend.
Gotcha.
So, no, it was good. It is good. It's been a great weekend so far.
Good.
got to meet my nephew.
Oh, William.
Yeah.
Hold on. If you give
For
me a
those
minute.
not in the know, I got a new nephew over the last week, and I got to meet him finally. It was very
Will,
nice, very nice.
I'm going to
Yeah.
interrupt you. You talk for a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay. We're just getting all the happy, fun, enjoyable stuff out of the way, because pretty much everything else we're going to talk about tonight is going to be not pleasant. I don't know if I quite want to call it unpleasant, because there's still, nuggets and little silver linings to be drawn from it, but none of it's particularly nice, and it's all very, very murky. It's very divisive and whatnot. But I think it needs to be talked about. I think having an open and amicable dialogue about it is a very important thing, especially when we're dealing with divisive topics like, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about the naming of the USNS Harvey Milk, as well as the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. But, we have pictures. That's a nice little interruption to my awful spiel.
Yes, I did interrupt your spiel. So this is one, and this is Mama and Baby.
Are you allowed to share these pictures?
I didn't even ask.
Better ask forgiveness and permission, I guess.
It is. It's much easier to ask forgiveness than permission. Much easier. And then we have, as soon as it gets here, I have one more, which is the actual
BB.
Actual baby pic.
There we go. He can. No, I don't want to leave him on the screen for this, but he is quite cute. He's a fuzzy little bugger.
So I like that word more than some of the others, because he was born, and a few hours after he was born, I get a call from Chad, the dad, and he says, "Hey, Dave, Levi Jordan was born." I'm like, "Cool." He said, "He looks just like you. We all decided he looks like you." And the next thing I hear is, "He's a chubby baby." I'm like, okay, I can sort of live with that. And then Susan hops in, the other sponsor of the show, who is no kinder than your boss, my brother, and said, "Yep, he's a chubber, all right. Looks just like Dave." And then to add insult to injury, I'm talking to Chad, and he's describing when he was born, and they're laying him on Megan, when she's first born, he's laying on her chest. And Chad says, "Yeah, I just looked at him in the side profile, and he looks like you." There's only one problem with that. The only thing that he can see is his naked ass. So I look like that child's naked ass. He's chubby.
I think that's not no.
And so I'm not sure if I should be having an identity crisis here, or if Levi is going to grow up and need more therapy than I already need. I'm not sure which one it is.
A healthy mixture of both, perhaps. Oh, man.
But yeah, that was my introduction to Levi when he came in the world. Looks just like you. Oh, he's a chubby.
He reminds me of Alex, actually, just because of his hair.
He does.
He's just got a full head of hair.
He does.
But yeah, no, it's great.
Looking at the pictures, I have to agree. He has hair. He does inherit the Smith genes a little bit more than his sister did, which will be for better or ill. We'll figure that out later on in life. But yes, he was the big news this week. The real news this week. All the rest of this nonsense we're going to talk about is just exactly that nonsense.
It's all fluff.
Fluff. After Levi was born, we don't care about the rest.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So to get back to the serious talk, today we're going to be talking about what we titled the video, which was media literacy, and
you did not name it that.
What did I name
media
it again?
bias.
I thought I named. Oh, media bias. My
media
bad.
bias.
I changed it. So media bias, kind of the same, related concepts, not identical, because we're going to talk about two different stories that are very polarizing, and how they're not as simple as the headlines make them out to be. And that's not just me throwing shade at MSMs for making simplistic headlines to make clicks. But I want people to understand that it's not just something that they're doing because they're trying to be shady, or they have an agenda, or they want to push an idea. It's something they will always do because it makes money. because it generates clicks. It's not even necessarily because they agree or disagree with what they're talking about, but it generates revenue. That's the bottom line. News in North America is a exclusively for-profit system. I couldn't think of any news organization that didn't have some level of profit attached to them. And so they are going to be biased, and it just gets more and more extreme the more profitable the news source becomes. So you have the big ones, your
So
global newses, your Fox Newses, etc.
I want to interrupt for just a moment there
Mm-hmm.
as you delve into this. So what you're saying is that in an ideal world, news organizations would be agnostic. Agnostic is not the real word, except would be unbiased
They would report the news
and would
and
not be
then have an
profit driven.
opinion. In a perfect world, yes, but I mean, this is late stage capitalism, so profit driven is a given.
Yeah, but does it have to be?
That's the thing. You're gonna have a hard time convincing people to be okay with not making profit just to do the right thing. That's
Well,
hard to
I
do
know a
in this day
number
and
of
age.
organizations who are not profit driven, who lean
Mm-hmm.
very much on the left. That would be in your country, be CBC, and ours here, it'd be PBS,
Right.
which are not profit driven, and yet almost exclusively will lean left.
I have snarky answers to that, but I'm going to try and
That's
avoid
okay.
them.
No, that's okay. I have snarky answers to some of yours a little bit later on, so
Yeah.
so bring them
So
on.
my snarky answer is the reason they lean left is due to them being community funded. They predominantly are focused on more compassionate political ideals, and that just happens to align with the left. Whether or not what the left is doing is actually compassionate enough, it fits into that slot nicely. On the surface, a lot of what the left does sounds compassionate, at least to the people on the left.
Or would it be more so the fact that the majority of the governments who fund them and the majority of the funding is coming from left leaning organizations?
That too, and that's you're right. It's not for profit, but
It's where their money comes from to fund
it's where their
what
money
they do.
comes from instead of just where they're generating it. So it's still money is the defining factor in how they're pushing their news rather than the news itself.
So
And so the two stories, sorry.
it isn't only for profit, it's where the money is coming from is really
Mhm.
is the defining. In
Yeah.
those cases, it's where their funds are coming from.
Yeah, if you want to get into like super philosophy stuff here, the whole follow the money concept is really nice on paper to say just follow the money and you'll find the truth. Money is everywhere. Every news organization is following the money, their own ends. Every pharmaceutical company, every regulatory board, everything, money is factoring somewhere into that, and we just have to accept that to a certain degree. I mean, we're just human beings, and inevitably are fallible in that regard.
So why do we have to accept that?
I don't think after these many millennia of human society, I don't think we've gotten better. I think we've only gotten worse at curtailing our greed. We've just gotten better at hiding it.
Man,
So I don't.
gosh, I would hope that as a society, so the left or the progressives are the angle which at least in their own world they believe if they're more interested in the good of society rather than another right. And I would agree with that is if you're progressive or left, you have a more altruistic view of the world. You think if everybody is nice, if
Yeah.
only if one life is saved, it's enough, etc. And again, your view is more society driven. You would
Right, rather
think,
than personal
right,
or
or
identity
corporate
driven.
gain.
Hmm.
You would think that on the left, you would look at this and say, man, it's not good that these organizations are funded through our dollars as they're going to be an echo chamber for our ideas. And yet they very much are funding
Hmm.
their own echo,
It's
their own echo chambers.
it's kind of an impossible situation because if you let them fund themselves, they will go wherever the money is coming from, and if you fund them yourselves, inevitably they will, like you say, become an echo chamber for where the money is coming from.
Right.
So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. because they can't do it without money, unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Uh,
So on that number, what would be your answer as a progressive? What would be your suggestion in an ideal world?
I mean, in a perfect world,
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to sound like an outlandish concept, especially considering our capitalism based society. This is going to sound like a very outlandish concept, and I understand that it is utterly unrealistic. In a perfect world, we would all not have to drive so hard to get income to live comfortably, because we would all just live comfortably. Using to use a comparison, not the exact thing, but to compare it to like a UBC, a universal basic income, where people don't have to go out and get money just to survive. The surviving is handled. I think that theoretically there would be a lot less drive to scrape and claw for every dollar you can get your hands on through any means you can get your hands on it, or to hold on to the dollars that you're getting by any means necessary, if you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to be able to put food on the table or a roof over your head. If you want nicer food and nicer table and nicer roof, sure, go for it. I think that having something to be ambitious for should still be there and be rewarded. But if you take away the absolute necessity at the bottom that drives people to push harder than they should,
So in an ideal
theoretically.
world, if I hear you correctly, you don't have to struggle to eat or to pay your rent.
Yeah.
And for struggling, you're going to say if you want more, you can struggle. You can work harder if you want more
Mm-hmm.
than that, except everybody ought to have a basic,
Mm-hmm. In theory.
sort of a baseline.
Again, this is all pipe dream. Like, this is
This is a
all
progressive idea,
la la
right?
land.
Well, there's the progressive ideal. This is why
I
the
mean,
progressives are looking for UBIs and those.
yeah, in a
So I don't
perfect
think it's
world.
out to lunch in that arena, if you will, in the
Mm-hmm.
progressive arena. I don't think it's out of line. I think that for those of us who sit on the other side, you say, okay, well, how are you going to pay for that?
This is where it becomes outlandish. There's the pay for it. There's a whole lot of psychological things attached to it. Like, in our current society, if all of a sudden everyone had access to the basic necessities, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that we would all get very lazy very fast if it was all just provided immediately. I don't think I think that a very large number of people would just get incredibly lazy incredibly fast. And I don't say that to be as like a detraction against them or saying that they're in the wrong. I just, in a society that's pushed us to have to work excessive hours for basic things, all of a sudden having to not work at all would be seen as, it's seen as such an incredible concept that I think we would jump at the opportunity to not work for an extended period of time. And it's so complex, because then you have like things like ambition. If your basic needs are met, your ambition would shift into what do I have to do to what do I want to do. But in between going from what do I have to do to what do I want to do, there's a whole lot of nothingness. And I don't think, I mean, I am not really good at filling that gap. I have a decent job. I have that pays me well and has really reasonable hours. And so I
I
don't
heard
feel this intense, huh?
heard your boss is a jerk, though.
Yeah, he's kind of an ass sometimes. But I don't have this overbearing urge now to like to scramble in that regard. And so I have time and I have money now to look at the things that I want to do. And I find myself having a hard time doing them, even though I've now finally have the ability to do them better than I have in years. It's such a strange concept, because now I'm thinking about working, but I'm not getting directly paid for it. I'm not getting immediate gain for it, or any gain at all.
We're learning that from 781 downloads of the podcast.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not just how are you going to pay for it.
Right.
It's so much other stuff that is all attached to that makes it a pipe dream. But we're getting
So to
kind of
get
off
back to
track.
the media thing,
Yeah.
where this started, how would it, in the progressive world where everybody's living on an UBI, where all the basic needs are met, how would that affect media?
in theory.
In theory, yeah.
The media is there to report what happens,
But who pays
not
them?
to. They don't need. That's the thing. The being paid part, at least to a certain degree, could theoretically fall to the wayside because every employee already has their needs met. So people who are going out of their way to report things are doing it because that's what they want to do. They care about digging up the truth. They care about reporting the news as it is rather than an editor saying, hey, if this is what happened, we need to hit on this topic, and this topic because those are the ones that most of our readers are going to focus on. That's what's going to generate ad revenue. So that's the stuff we're going to write about.
Well, let's dial this back a little bit more into with the world of what may happen. Is I think that you and I will agree on the fact that that's never going to happen, not in our lifetime.
Yeah, not in our
So
lifetimes.
when
No.
I look at the new media, when I look at the Joe Rogans, the Ben Shapiros, at the Young Turks,
Ew, gross.
but there's a number of new media companies. You have the Daily Wire, you have
The Blaze.
The Hill, you have the Blaze. All these who are money driven, and yet they also will cover things from a wider angle, especially when you look at The Hill or Joe Rogan and some of these who will take in opinions from all over the place and say, here it is.
Yes.
It's not an angle. It just is. It's giving viewpoints out to everybody. It's money driven, and yet it is.
I think for people like that, I think a large part of it is they don't have, how to word it, there's less repercussion for a Joe Rogan or any podcaster or new media. There's less repercussion for them if they're not reporting the news. I think they bridge the gap between news and opinion pieces. They exist in
Or
kind
is
of
it
a
news and
midway
entertainment?
house. All right, whichever way you want to look at it. Like if you want to look at Joe Rogan as an opinion show or an entertainment show,
But when
kind
you
of the
have a
same
Joe
poop,
Rogan
different pile.
who brings on, brings on the show Bernie Sanders,
Mhm.
and he's on the show for 3 hours, in which nobody else is giving him an idea or a window that large.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and he brings on a Ben Shapiro
Mhm.
or Alex Jones.
That's
And he gives
good.
them equal billing.
Mhm.
He says, here you go.
And
When you look at The
I
Hill, and The Hill,
I don't know
I
what
don't
The
know if
Hill
you know of
is.
The Hill.
No, I don't.
It's a right or center of a number of shows who will have a right-leaning and kind of left-leaning host. And they look, it's like the Will and Dave show.
Kind of. Just less friendly.
And they talk about all sorts of topics, and they give an angle from each side.
Mhm.
And all of these guys are kicking the seat off of all the old media, the CNNs and the Fox News.
Yeah.
They're kicking them in viewership.
Mhm.
And yet everybody
Why can't we do
argues and everybody has a hate on for MSN and for Fox News and for CNN when honestly, they are the least consumed of all the news sources.
Yes, this is true. I guess they stand out because they are the ones who utilize this the tactic of kind of shock news, I think, because it's how they stay relevant now. It's partially driven, I think, out of desperation to a degree, because just reporting the news doesn't sell like it used to, and because there are new ways and new people who can do it. There are people like us who could theoretically do a news show from our homes. We don't need
Hey,
big camera crews or big budgets.
we are doing a show from our home.
We are. It's not a news show per se.
It's an opinion show.
It's an opinion show, entertainment.
This is a good spot to interject. We don't know what we're talking about. This is all opinions. I just want to
Yes.
throw that out there. The Will and Dave show, we do not speak the news, we opine about the news.
Hey, nice word work there. Wordsmithing.
Yeah, whatever it
Nice
is.
vocab.
Yeah. So in your ideal world, there's no money for the news guys.
Not
All the
no
reporters are
money,
working for
but it
free,
doesn't. No, no, no,
and they're
no. It's not
reporting
no
as it
money. It's
happens.
less.
Okay. So let's move on to
My
either one of
example.
the stories that you want to pick up on. Again,
Okay.
we'll begin
So
on the one of your
we'll
choice.
we'll start with the UNS. I'm trying to
USN
find it here. USNS. The USNS Harvey Milk.
Harvey Milk,
It's a ship that was launched by the Navy.
which I just learned about.
Yeah. So it caused some controversy. Some controversy due to being named after Harvey Milk. For those of you who don't know, Harvey Milk was the first openly gay elected official in U.S. history and was promptly assassinated. I don't know if that was because he was gay or not. I don't know his history that well, but that's not really here nor there within the scope of this. The big thing that I wanted to draw attention to is, again, because of all the time I've spent on Twitter, which keeps coming up. I wonder why. But I've been seeing a lot of very polarized opinions on the naming of a ship after Harvey Milk. Many progressive people are very like, yay, go, awesome, that's great, what an icon. And lots of other people on the more right wing side of things are like, wow, he was a pederast, that's gross. If you're like me and didn't know what a pederast was, I had to Google it. Do you want to read the
I'm looking
definition
it
of
up
that there,
right
Dave?
now. I'm looking it up right now.
I had to Google this too.
Okay, you Google it and read it.
Google it and read it.
Sure.
So a pederast is a man who desires or engages in sexual activity with a boy.
As in an underage boy?
Just a boy. Doesn't define underage, just says a boy. Which is kind of why I think this isn't used as often as, say, pedophile or pedophilia. So, true to fact, Harvey Milk was, as a 32 or 34-year-old man, I can't remember which, in a relationship with someone who was 16. So, from what I found out from some simple Google searching, so take this all with a grain of salt, it was a purely consensual relationship, although it was topsy-turvy, obviously, as that's a weird relationship. At the time of that, the legal age of consent in New York was 16. Now, does that make it okay or not? That's a bigger question that I feel like trying to answer today. But just looking at that, so Harvey Milk guy did a very monumental thing within American history with
Which was?
being the first openly gay elected official. Like
Okay.
that was a barrier. He
Okay.
got kicked out of the military for being gay. He got a what do they call it? Trying to find out what it's called. His dismissal from the military was a less than honorable dismissal. It was kind of what they used to do during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell era.
Yes.
So for him to have come all that way was a really monumental thing. It's a big turning point in American history, specifically in regards to the LGBTQ community. But he did this thing that is, depending on where you sit, ranges anywhere from disgusting to questionable. I mean, I'm sure some people are fine with it. I'm going to use those borders. That's kind of where I waft between. And so he's this act of naming a ship after him is getting characterized as either a disgusting thing, like uplifting a pedophile or uplifting an icon of American history. And people don't really seem to talk a lot about all that's in between those 2 points.
Well, I think it's because we live in a society in which everybody is polarized.
Yeah. But the media is perpetuating that, and if not making it
so
more extreme.
I want to come back a little bit. So we had an actress a year or two ago who was on The Mandalorian. What was her name?
Oh, I know her name.
She was right wing.
Find it.
She was a conservative, or not really conservative. She voted actually for the Dems in the previous election, but she had a change of heart.
I'm gonna find it. Just give me half a second, because I know it.
She lost her job.
Gina Carano.
Right. She lost her job, not because she was a horrible person, not because she was dating a 14-year-old, but she lost her job and lost a sizable amount of income for what she posted on Twitter, of all things.
Yes.
So when you want to ask me, well, why is there outrage over the Harvey Milk and the ship? For me, it's pretty clear. He was dating or married to, or in a relationship with a
In a relationship with a
16-year-old boy,
mm-hmm.
which in so many areas of society is wrong.
Yes.
If you look at what happened to Kevin Spacey,
Mm-hmm.
he was in a relationship with a young man,
Mm-hmm.
lost his job. Odds are he'll never work in Hollywood again.
Yeah.
We have a guy who was in a relationship with a young man who, by all modern standards,
Mm-hmm.
he was a pedophile.
Yes. Sort of, but yes. We'll go with that.
By all modern standards now, he was a pedophile.
The age of consent in like half the states is still 16.
Okay.
So it's not pedophilia, it's just
Wrong.
sus.
Yes. And we're going to name a ship after him.
Yeah.
And you don't think there should be outrage? We're going to honor a guy whose
I think there should be conversations.
Action years ago
mm-hmm.
was, at the very least, was suspect.
Yeah.
Why are you laughing?
Because you're setting me up. You're setting me up
good.
to knock
I'm
him down. This is great.
Hit away,
So,
batter boy.
What he did, I will not defend
Okay.
with all my yupping and yupping. I'm not going to defend what he did because my personal opinion is that a 30-something-year-old dating a 16-year-old is. Hey, I haven't used my swear word yet today. It's fucking gross. I think that is a gross power imbalance that just shouldn't be. But what he did for the LGBTQ plus community, is still significant.
What?
A lot.
What did he do?
He got elected. I mean, on top of any amount of advocacy that he got involved in, the fact that he put himself out there at a time in history where, well, spoiler alert, he got assassinated, in part at least due to his open homosexuality, that was still something that you could, like, having oral sex was still illegal in that state, technically, between men. Like, what he did was he put himself at risk, extreme risk, both professionally and personally, with what he did. Now, just a second. Let me get through this here.
Okay, get through it.
You can look at almost any historical figure,
yes.
from big to small.
Yes.
A lot of them did awful things.
Yes.
Like really awful things, equivalent or worse than what Harvey Milk did, and we still venerate them on a regular basis.
Yes.
I don't think that him doing something awful, even as categorically awful as what he did, should necessarily take away from the good that he did. Does it mean that we should worship Harvey Milk or think that Harvey Milk is categorically a great guy and there's nothing wrong and it's all fine? No.
Should we name a ship after him?
Why not? The whole series, the whole set of ships they're making like an 8-ship run, the John Lewis class ships.
Yeah.
They're all being named specifically after important characters in the social justice movements. Social justice, is that what it was?
Sure.
But yeah, so people like Harvey Milk, they're intentionally naming, like, the ship's name has been in the works since like 2016 for that ship specifically.
Is this the same society who wants to yank down our statues of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington?
Not Abraham
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
Same society? Yes, they do.
Where do we hang down a Washington or Lincoln statue?
Do you really want me to look this up?
Yes. I know statues of General Lee and other leadership within the Confederacy. And I'm not even necessarily saying that yanking those statues down is right. But
Lincoln was removed in Boston, but he remains in D.C.
How is it removed, though?
It's a picture. It was a statue of Lincoln. He's standing over an emancipated black man.
That's probably why.
Oh yeah, because he freed a guy and the guy is thankful for it, and it probably was taken from a pose that actually happened, but we cannot
It's possible,
acknowledge the.
but it doesn't have to be in public. It could go to a museum. Was it destroyed?
We don't have to stick a name on a ship of a gay guy who was a
Because
pedophile either.
who,
This is
in
where
the
I'm
in the
coming
same
from.
sense that a statue in a museum is remembrance, but not putting it out to the public, this ship being named, nobody, as soon as this crests its little cycle in the news cycle, nobody's going to give a crap. Nobody's going to care. This is going to become non-news in a matter of weeks. People are going to forget. A year from now, I'm going to be like, to a friend, I could be like, hey, did you hear about the UNSCS Harvey Milk? And they're going to be like, the what? It's going to be that all over again. It's not that big of a deal.
So my point is, you were wondering why there are people who are outraged.
No, I'm wondering why we can't have a more nuanced conversation like you and me
Well,
are having right now, because it's not just black
I
and white outrage.
I think the reason you're seeing outrage on the part of the right, who is outraged at this, from what I've
Yeah,
read, is because we have a society which says, "Hey, George Washington, bad."
George Washington was a slave owner. Shortly, like,
Yeah,
he did bad
okay,
things.
okay. Harvey
Yeah,
Milk was
yeah.
a
It
podiatrist,
doesn't
whatever.
pederast. It doesn't mean he doesn't deserve recognition. I'm just saying, or like they
Okay,
do or don't. But
so
we can
this is
adjust our levels of recognition. That should be a-okay.
and this is where people are saying, do we want to name a ship after a pedophile? If you can have a statue of a
Do we want?
guy who was the president of the United States, I understand the outrage from those who sit
I'm
there and say,
again. I'm not saying that the outrage is
okay,
bad over the situation,
okay,
but I want this to be to look at how we tend to just take one side and that's it. Like you and me right now, we are a great I not toot our own horn. We're providing a great example because we're sitting here and we're working out the minutia. Is it good? Is he bad enough? Good enough? He did do good things. He also did bad things and all this stuff. Whereas the majority of the conversations that I see, especially in online spaces like
hmm,
Twitter, and in news headlines is just either, yay, Harvey Milk didn't do anything bad, doesn't mention that anywhere, just like, wow, what an amazing character, name a ship after him, good stuff, or, wow, Harvey Milk a pedophile, how could we? How could we? Awful, shame.
well, I think it's
And that's
because
it.
of the society that we find ourselves in, Will.
Yes.
I really do. I think it's
And that's why
because of
we're
the
fighting
cancel
against
culture.
it.
Well,
In our own little way.
yes, in our own little way.
In our own little way.
Let's move on to the next
Just
story.
kidding. I'm going to change the whole thing
Yeah, we're going to change the
myself.
world with our one viewer. So let's move on to the next
Uh,
story.
yeah. So the next story is Kyle Rittenhouse trial, which for those of you who don't know, I should probably pull up, make sure I'm getting this right here.
If they don't know about the Kyle Rittenhouse
You're living
story, they've
under a
been
rock.
living under a rock. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kyle Rittenhouse was a young man who shot and killed how many people? I think it was
Oh,
two people,
three, I
two or
think.
three people with an assault rifle uh, in, I can't remember
Wisconsin.
which state it was in even. Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Thank you. He's from Illinois. And so he's currently going through trial for that. I think he's being charged with 3 counts of first degree reckless manslaughter or reckless homicide, I think is the charge. Or some of the charges. There's like a list of them. It's a big deal.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I've watched the entirety of it, but I've watched good chunks of it. Almost the entirety of this trial is available online. You can watch it.
Why
This
did that
isn't like a
surprise you?
closed
O.J.
door.
Simpson's the same way.
Yeah. But again, we're having a situation where the discourse around Kyle Rittenhouse is absolute and black and whites. It's either he's innocent, self-defense, did nothing wrong, acquit him now, otherwise we riot, or it's he killed 3 people in cold blood, came there with an assault rifle to murder people. If he's not sentenced, we riot. And there's so little discourse about the in between. And if we were to just slow down and look at the trial, or better yet, have mainstream media that reported a more fleshed out and comprehensive more comprehensive stories of the trial, we would learn that it is a very complex and convoluted situation that this trial is going through, and it's incredibly interesting, like dealing with how he was genuinely being threatened. Like there are witnesses saying that he was being threatened. Like he had every reason for self-defense. At the same time, there is footage that may be of him. We don't have confirmation on this yet, of him saying that, hey, I'm going to go get a gun and I wish I could just do something about this with my gun or something to that effect. I'm not quoting him verbatim, obviously. I want to,
Right.
this is a perfect moment for disclaimer. This is what I read online, and these are not the absolute facts. This is
So
an
this is
opinion
ninth
piece.
hand.
This is like ninth hand, but I'm just using the story as an example. So on one hand, it looks like he was acting out of self-defense. On the other hand, it looks like he came to that location kind of looking for trouble, which he found, with a weapon that he wasn't supposed to be carrying in that state because he bought it in the other state over and he wasn't legally able to carry it. There's so much complexity to this case. It is not just like, hey, self-defense, he's fine, or hey, he murdered 3 people, bad. There's so much to it. There is so much to this case that makes it more than that. And we could be learning as a society, conversing about this online. We could be just developing a much better conversation around this case, around gun control in general, around the riots that happened in general, around how the police arrest did and didn't happen with him, because there's a lot of controversy around that as well. There's so much other stuff we could be talking about instead of just beating our foreheads against each other
So
over just
yes,
black and white stuff.
I mean, I kind of agree with you. I'm watching as well, and I'm going to add a disclaimer here. I don't
Mhm.
watch any news on TV anymore. I don't have TV,
Same.
and so I don't watch news on CNN or Fox or MSNBC. I won't watch it.
Hmm.
So, so the other one I've been watching from a distance is the one with the actor who shot
Baldwin, Alec Baldwin.
right off Baldwin.
Hmm.
It's
I'm much less
accidental.
versed on that one.
It was accidental. A stunt gun loaded with real bullets, and he
Hmm.
shot a guy and killed him.
Girl, I think.
Okay, girl. It shows how much I know. And there are calls for him to be charged with the involuntary manslaughter or something.
Hmm.
In between the two ends of these stories, where you have a guy with a stunt gun who accidentally kills somebody,
Hmm.
there are folks saying you need to charge him, need to get him off the street because he made a mistake. It really was not even his mistake. And then you have a kid who walks around with an AR-15 and shoots people. And there's arguments that says, he said he was going to do it. We don't know the story in either one. And so I'm not a fan of Alec Baldwin. I didn't like him in The Hunt for Red October, and I don't think I've liked him in any show he's ever done, as he ruined the movie. How can you stick him across from Sean Connery? It's a crime against humanity.
But okay.
But in between the two extremes, getting the camera here,
Mhm.
there ought to be some normalcy. And there's not. And I would agree with you in the Kyle Rittenhouse that we don't know the whole story, except I can promise you that his motives were questionable.
Yeah.
Like he showed up, had a protest from out of state.
Yeah.
With an AR-15.
I don't say AR-15. It's an AR style rifle. Let's just be broad.
It's an AR-15 style rifle.
Otherwise, our local firearms expert Wayne is going to come down on us.
I don't think he listens to the show, so I think we're safe.
It's unfortunate. His loss.
Yes. He was showing up there with a rifle which was meant for hurting people.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that his motives were altogether pure.
Right.
And so I get why we have a trial for him, why we have to look at him and say, maybe we should look at this a little more in depth. I think we look at Alex Baldwin, who I don't like, and I say, you know what? Absolutely investigate the cause so it doesn't happen again. But we don't have to charge the man with involuntary manslaughter because he fired a gun that he thought had blanks.
Yeah, and this is something that deserves investigation, and we just we need to let them do their thing.
Yes.
Because, like, again, with Baldwin, there's so many factors that could play a part. I don't know anything about the case. So I'm just going to rattle off what I theorize as factors. You know, where was the props person? Because those things should be checked. Why was he using the gun? Because it sounds weird that he would have shot a crew member rather than the person he was pointing, I'm assuming, pointing the gun at in the scene. So was he firing it when he wasn't supposed to? Was he playing with a prop? I don't know. These are all things that we would need to know before we can form an opinion. But the court of public opinion is so ham-fisted and ridiculous.
I
I
don't
think
think any of these ought to be like in the public domain.
I think you're right.
It began with
Like,
OJ, where these things all became a media circus,
yeah,
and you go from OJ, go all through the riots in LA, get through Rodney King riots,
mhm.
and the more recent one with what's his name, who died, the black guy who died. You know who I'm talking about.
I do. George Floyd.
If the media were not involved, it would have been solved without the court of public opinion.
Now, this is where it gets murky. Is I hate the court of public opinion, but I love that the media puts a spotlight on things like that. Because if the media didn't put a spotlight on George Floyd, it would have just been swept under the rug. It would have been a nothing. It would have been out of the way, and nobody would have known. Like, I probably wouldn't be in jail for it. It would have been a whole different ball game. So I like there being spotlights. I like there being pressure on people to follow through and to find justice. But we have to
You can't have
understand
it
that
both ways.
well, we should, in theory, we should be able to have pressure on these people. Should be able to have a spotlight on and be like, we're watching, do the right thing. But we from the outside have to understand that we do not have access to all the information that the people actually investigating these things have. We simply don't. And we
But
cannot make
we
these
do.
bold statements. In
These
like
are the
things like the
things.
Kyle Rittenhouse trial, sure.
Like every camera angle, every audio, like every body cam,
Yes,
we have all the data.
but to put it in perspective,
Yes.
the people sifting through the data in the Rittenhouse trial, there are teams,
Yes.
like entire teams of people
Yes.
that are sifting through this data with a fine-tooth comb. I don't care how dedicated you are to the case. Any person with a PC,
Mm-hmm.
you will not have a greater understanding of the case than they will. It doesn't matter how available the videos are. Even if you're just watching the trial, like you're kind of getting a slideshow of all the evidence.
Yes,
but there's still
here's
so
the
much that we're not
difference, Will.
privy to.
Half of the people who are looking at this are looking at the data and saying, we want to exonerate him.
Mm-hmm.
The other half of the people who are looking at the data are looking at him and saying, we want to put him behind bars.
Welcome to the legal system.
The media is looking at it saying, how can we drag this out as long as we can because it's great for ratings?
Yeah.
So nobody is looking at the data from the angle of where is the truth. Really, they're looking at it from
their
the
people in it. Sure. I mean, I would like to think that the defense and prosecution are looking for it from a point of view of where is the truth. In a case like this, at least, where it's convoluted. The news media, you're right, they're just going to drag it out as long as humanly possible and stir the pot as much as humanly possible. But us on the outside, I think there's a certain level of responsibility for us to, okay, we put the spotlight on it. There's obviously a lot of attention here that we want. Now we sit back and let the professionals do their thing, do what they do.
See, I think as a progressive, you want it both ways. And that's where I push back a little bit, is I think you want the media to shine their light on it and say, hey, there's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then you also want the media to hold their feet to the fire and say, you have to sort this out. And if not, we're going to show it over and over and over again until you sort it out the way we think you should. And that's what happened with George Floyd. It's what's happening now with Rittenhouse. It happened with Rodney King. It happened with O.J. Simpson. And the media remains on it every day as we have to shine a light. We have to let the people know what's going on. And yet it is obviously it's slanted. And not from one way or the other. It's slanted. If it's on Fox News, it's right. If it's on MSNBC, it's left. And
Yeah.
I would say the media should not have access
But then how do
to
we
any.
keep the feet to the fire so they actually hunt down justice in instances like this instead of just making them all disappear? Because it would be less hassle if they just quickly made it disappear. And the chances of actual justice being served decrease drastically.
So what you're saying is that if the media is involved, we will get more justice.
I'm saying if there's pressure on people to be more thorough because they know that the world is staring over their shoulder, I feel like you're probably going to get closer to
So
justice.
that is
Yes.
called the court of public opinion.
The difference is that I
That's
want
what it
us to
is.
watch. The difference is I want us to watch. Okay, so
It's what it
funny
is,
tangent.
Will.
Funny. You just hear me out here. Hear me out.
Okay.
Funny tangent.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
talking with my aunt today. We were reminiscing about the good old days and how I used to go watch her son, my cousin, play video games. He
Right.
did not like me invading his room and watching him play video games. This is Zachary.
Yeah.
Uh, so there was a rule. If I'm going to watch, I have to shut up. If I talk, I get kicked out. We, as the court of public opinion, let's take the opinion part out. We should watch. There should be pressure, but we should also shut up.
So
We do
what?
not have to. We don't have to voice our opinions constantly. I say as I'm talking on an opinion show.
So what's the? So what's the use of it then? It's voyeurism at that point.
But I want us to talk. It's not that I don't want us to talk about it. It's that
Okay.
I want us to talk about it differently. So when I say shut up, I'm talking about the people like, I'm going to use him, even though I use him as an example all the time, the Matt Walshes of the world,
Yeah.
or the Crowders of the world, who it is
Mhm.
just, Rittenhouse is innocent. I know he's innocent, and if he's not innocent, that's wrong. America's going down the toilet.
Mhm.
That's the kind of opinion that does nothing for anyone. That is regurgitating what the media is saying or what the media would like us to say, and it's just continuing to stir the pot. That's not good public discourse. That is fruitless, barren, and devoid of any level of
So what happens
nuance.
if he is acquitted
Then he's acquitted.
and they were right?
Then we have to deal with it. But at the same time, you have people like I don't know if he's actually said anything about it, but I'm going to use him as an example again. The Sean Kings of the world, who basically say if Kyle Rittenhouse doesn't go to jail for first-degree murder, it's an absolute travesty and America's going down the toilet.
Yes.
I can almost guarantee you that he is neither going to get tried for first-degree murder, nor is he going to get out scot-free. He's probably going to get nailed for something in there, and it's going to be somewhere in the middle. I think it was you that when I was growing up used to tell me that when two different parties try to reach an
Yes.
agreement and both people leave angry or feeling like they didn't get what
Yeah.
they wanted, it's probably fair.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
But the
it's
court
it's
of
not
opinion won't do
cathartic.
that.
No, the court of public opinion won't allow it because we don't allow nuance in our
No.
conversations. We
No.
don't
And
allow
the court of
shades
public
of gray.
opinion, it is dangerous.
Yeah, and that's what I don't like.
Well, as much as I want to agree with you, it would
It's another pipe dream.
put you and I out of a job because
Mm.
we want to be a
Yeah.
public opinion.
Yeah, but we want to talk about things in a nuanced way, like what we're doing right now. Like
That's true.
we're picking it apart from all these different angles and pulling on all these different threads, and not just I have an opinion, I will defend it till I die, or this is the way it is. There's so much nuance to it, and I'm coming away from this conversation that we're having now already questioning some of the things that I thought I was going into this conversation sure of, because we talked about it in a nuanced way.
Nuance is good, and I'll agree
Mhm.
with that. I don't know if you're going to get society
Oh, probably not. It's a pipe
who
dream.
is voyeuristic at its base
We are.
level
Mm-hmm.
to be nuanced in their opinions. Look at the last elections. There was
Yeah.
no nuance in either one.
Still
In
isn't.
your country or mine.
Yeah.
There was no nuance. There's I want what I want when I want it, and if you don't like it, I hate you.
Yeah.
We're seeing it with vaccines. We're seeing it with mandates. We're seeing it with so many things. And unfortunately, I agree with you, Will, that I think it's one voice at a time. It's one ear at a time. If you can get one more individual who will.
We've got two of them
Listen.
watching right now, Dave.
Yes, but they won't say who they are, so I don't believe it.
It's bots.
If you'll have a coffee with somebody who you don't agree with, say so in the comments. That'd be two people changed.
Bit by bit, that is the kind of conversation I want to foster. That's
It
what
is.
I love about this show. That's what I want to do with this show is foster more nuanced, more compassionate conversation about these topics that are so divisive. And so we're so used to them now. I feel like I've become so jaded to them being so black and white that I find myself wanting to chime in on Twitter. Like I'm there perusing it every day now, and I find myself wanting to be like, "Wow, you're an idiot," and just that's all I wanted to leave. I almost commented on somebody. I was just like, "Wow, so you're stupid then, I guess," and that's all I wanted to say because it's so easy. There's so many other people in there saying it. I'd just be another voice in the throng, and it would make me feel better. It'd be super cathartic to tell somebody they're being an idiot if I think they're being an idiot. But that doesn't do anything. It doesn't help anyone. That doesn't engage in any kind of conversation. That's just dogpiling for the sake of being included.
I don't know, Will. I know there are days that I'm an idiot.
Me too. And there's days that Dave Rubin is an idiot too. But he doesn't need me to tell him that. I don't think that's going to do anything good. There's lots of other
On
people on
that
Twitter doing
note,
that for me.
we've been an hour. Probably should move along. We just would like to invite you all to share, like, subscribe.
Mhm.
As a little flangey thingy down in the bottom there.
Or
whenever
comment
it
on the
decides
video.
to show up.
Or if you didn't see this on YouTube and you heard this on wherever fine podcasts are found, you can go to our website. You can send us your opinions there because we would love to hear from you and talk about it. We would love to talk about it on the show. A, it's free content for us, and B, we just like engaging with our audience.
That's right. And if you're interested in being a guest on the show, we would love to have you on the show.
Yeah.
You can leave us an email at info@thewillanddaveshow.com, and we will get back to you. We love having guests because almost without exception, they're smarter than we are.
So far, yes.
I don't think that track record is going to be broken anytime soon, Will.
No.
So
I know my place.
you and me both. So until next week, William, would you like to leave our viewers and our listeners with a last word of wisdom?
Stay safe, folks, and don't die. Have a good night.